You Pet It, You Bought It is the 6th episode of Season 8 of Full House. This is directed by Joel Zwick, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's a good episode. There's not a lot to cover. It's a pretty straightforward, mostly one narrative story. There are a few tiny subplots, and I'll talk about that, and everything connects together really well, but there's not too much going on here. It's quite a light-hearted episode, but also I think with a good message in this as well. So we'll go through things chronologically and share some thoughts, but I don't have a tremendous amount to say. It starts off with Michelle being woken up by Nicky and Alex, and she asks them why they don't pester Stephanie, and it's because Stephanie's always really grumpy when she wakes up. So Michelle asks Stephanie for advice on how to be grumpy in the morning, and she teaches her by demonstrating that grumpiness. It was a fun way to start things off. The main narrative, and really the main focus, is Michelle and her lemonade stand. The other parts to the narrative, we have Danny with a photo, or I guess a portrait of an ancestor, it gave us a funny moment later on. I'll talk about that in a moment. And Jessie is trying to sing Three's Company, the theme for Three's Company, which is it's a good theme. I've heard the theme a lot. I've never seen the show, but I've heard the theme come up quite a bit. And Nicky and Alex are making him sing it, and we hear this quite a bit. And again, it's a really small part to the narrative, but it works really well as padding and a nice way to bring in some of the other characters. The main narrative, though, as I said, focuses on Michelle, and there are some contractors or builders outside doing some work, and it's a very hot day. So Michelle has made some lemonade and has set up a lemonade stand. And she did well financially by the end of the day because there are very hot workers outside. Michelle has a no change policy, and she ultimately made $221. That's absolutely crazy. And she wants to spend her money, but she doesn't tell Danny how much she earned. And I feel like Danny maybe should have asked that, because Michelle's still very young, and for her to be handling money at all is a big responsibility. But Michelle does ask if Kimmy can take her to the candy store, and Danny, not knowing that Michelle has $221, says yes. And I think it was setting up. It's hard to know if I would have felt this way or believed this, because I knew what was coming. Not only have I seen this before, but it's immediately obvious what happens if you look up on IMDb before watching it, which is probably not the best thing to do. But I think it was setting us up for Michelle coming home with a whole bag of candy, $200 worth of candy, which in itself would have been funny. I would have loved to have seen Danny's expression. But if you don't know what's going to happen, I'd say what happens next is insanely unpredictable. And I wish I remembered my initial reaction to this, because what does happen is Michelle comes home with a donkey. And I've just questioned how they got the donkey home. Did they just put it in the car? In Kimmy's car? I'm not 100% sure. It turns out they stopped off at a travelling petting zoo, and they're trying to sell off this donkey, so they sold the donkey. Bearing in mind they sold it to children. I don't think... Is Kimmy 18 yet? I can't remember, but certainly they sold it to Michelle at any rate, and that wasn't a great idea. But considering they're travelling petting zoo and they can't return the donkey, I don't think they cared too much. And obviously Danny realises, well, we'll just have to wait until tomorrow to do something about this donkey. The donkey's going to have to stay overnight, and then we get some comedy with the donkey keeping everybody up. They can't keep the donkey outside because it's noisy and keeping the neighbours up, so the donkey has to stay inside, and it's obviously causing a lot of problems. I also realised that for the first time I might be a little scared of donkeys. I don't know if it's because whenever I think of donkeys, I think of that scene in Pinocchio in the animated version, Disney's animated version. It's terrifying. But there was something about this donkey I found kind of intimidating. And I don't think I've ever felt that way before. So it was an interesting experience. And Shorty, the donkey's name, Shorty, ate Stephanie's homework. And obviously, as Stephanie pointed out, how can she tell her teacher the donkey ate her homework? And DJ, it turns out, is allergic to the donkey. And it's also senior picture day, so that's not great. And this is why the story with Danny's ancestor's portrait wasn't that interesting, but it led us to a brilliant moment when the donkey put its head through the portrait in the place of the head. And it was just, it's silly humor. It works so well. It was a really funny reveal, and I rather enjoyed it. So yeah, the whole portrait thing probably wasn't the most interesting, but to lead us to that point, it was obviously very, very effective. And ultimately what happens is they end up taking the donkey to the zoo, donating it, which I think was a really important message, because initially Michelle thought that they would be selling it and she'd get her money back. And Danny pointed out, no, we're donating the donkey. And I think there's a good message there that maybe you shouldn't impulsively buy a donkey or an animal of any kind, because if it goes wrong, one, that's cruel to the animal to have to get rid of it, but also you can't just sell it on and get your money back. It doesn't necessarily work like that. So I think there are some good messages there about not impulsively buying animals, but also ask your young child how much they've made from their lemonade stand, because either way, Michelle was coming back with either a donkey or a lot of candy. I feel like those were the only two options. And yeah, Danny's expression would have been great if she came back with $200 worth of candy, but his face, everybody's face when they saw the donkey was just, well, I imagine it mirrored viewers at home, their expressions as well. As I said, I don't remember how I first reacted to this, but I would imagine if you're unaware of what's happening, it would be very unexpected, and that unpredictability would be very effective. As I said, clearly it's not the most intricate narrative. There are not loads of problems the characters are all dealing with, but we do have obviously a problem that's affecting the whole family, and it's a great way to bring the characters together, and Jessie does eventually get the words to the song as well. So it's good fun. Made me realise I might be a little scared of donkeys. Not horses, and horses are a lot bigger. I don't know, there's just something about a donkey's face. It's quite intimidating. Either way, it's an enjoyable film. Not the most intricate, but we still have a lot of fun there, and some really great messages as well. You pet it, you bought it. It's a decent episode of Full House.